not zombies, they're not ghouls. Vampire spawn are much more than the undead brute squad. They're a tactical nightmare. Your party moves through the dark streets knowing some evil lurks there. Someone or something has been murdering residents of the old quarter for months. Suddenly, your bard cries out from the rear of the marching order. A pale woman with glowing red eyes leaps out of the shadows and swipes a vicious clawed hand at the bard, grappling her. The woman bares fangs and lunges toward the bard's neck. A vampire spawn. Before the rest of the party can react, the creature sinks its fangs into your bard's neck and begins to drink. Hey there, adventurers, I'm Judd, and this is Short Rest Studios, where we believe fun builds community. Don't forget, if you dig my content, subscribe to the channel and please consider joining the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button right under this video. It's spooky season, so it's the perfect time to talk about a classic fantasy monster, vampire spawn. You might use them as a vampire's goons or the lead up to a Strahd-like BBEG, but vampire spawn are so much more threatening. They're strong, quick, and cunning, and they'll use all their abilities to sate their relentless hunger. According to the 2025 Monster Manual, vampire spawn are newly created vampires who haven't quite mastered their abilities. Many of them are completely consumed by their hunger for blood, and they might serve a more powerful vampire, or they might not. The 2014 manual, however, says that all spawn are under the control of the vampire who created them. Anyone who's killed by a vampire's bite and then buried rises from the dead the next night as a vampire spawn. The only way they become a true vampire is by feeding on a true vampire. And what vampire is going to want to give up that control over one of its spawn and risk creating a rival? Not a one. DMs, let me know in the comments right now, do you prefer the 2014 rule where all vampire spawn are controlled, or the 2025 rule that lets them be independent and unpredictable?
Rising from the depths to terrorize your game night, it's Tablezilla from Legacy Game Tables.
Legacy Game Tables is a family-owned business started by game designers Clint and Jody Black in 2015. Not only are their signature game tables and other furniture like the massive Tablezilla strong and absolutely gorgeous, but they're created by real gamers who know what we need. They feature a wide-edge design that's perfect for RPG books, board game pieces, or drinks and snacks. There are even optional cup holders and a top that transforms your game table into a dining table. Head to legacygametables.com/shortreststudios for 10% off the gaming furniture of your dreams, or the perfect holiday gift for a gamer you love. Now let's take a look at the vampire spawn stat block. At a challenge rating of 5, the 2014 vampire spawn has an AC of 15 and 82 hit points. Its speed is pretty normal at 30. And when it comes to ability scores, the spawn leans pretty heavily into physical abilities. It's 16 on strength, dexterity, and constitution. That +3 bonus to each of those makes the vampire spawn pretty formidable. Intelligence and wisdom are pretty average, but it's not a dumb beast. The vampire spawn still has the ability to reason and make some judgment calls. Its charisma is 12, giving it a +1 bonus. That's not anywhere near the vampire's 18, but it can be pretty convincing in the right situation. It's got some features you'd expect: resistance to necrotic damage, it's already dead, as well as piercing and slashing from non-magical attacks. It's got dark vision and pretty good passive perception. Its regeneration ability allows it to regain 10 hit points every turn as long as it has at least 1 hit point and isn't in sunlight or running water. Smart PCs can slow this ability down by attacking with holy water or causing radiant damage. They can spider climb, always a freaky ability. They have multi-attack, either 2 attacks with their claws or 1 claw and 1 bite attack. They have a +6 to hit with either, and the claws do 2d4 +3 slashing. But instead of doing damage, the spawn can choose to grapple their opponent. The vampire spawn's bite does 1d6 +3 piercing and 2d6 necrotic damage. It also reduces the victim's max HP to equal the amount of necrotic damage, and the spawn regains that many hit points. And if the victim's max HP is reduced to 0, they die. No saves. They're just dead. Their bite is powerful, but there's a catch. The vampire spawn can only bite a victim who's willing, grappled, incapacitated, or restrained. Hold that thought. Now let's talk about the weaknesses. The vampire spawn can't enter a dwelling without the resident's permission. The spawn takes 20 acid damage when it ends its turn in running water. It's destroyed if it's stabbed in the heart by a wooden piercing weapon when it's incapacitated in its resting place. The classic stake to the heart. And it takes 20 radiant damage when it starts its turn in sunlight. Plus, it has disadvantage on attacks and ability checks when it's in the sun. My friend Dottie over at Mystic Arts has said that the vampire stat block is just a list of things that kill vampires. And he's kind of not wrong. So we might just need to doctor things a bit to run vampire spawn right. Incidentally, we're talking about vampire spawn here today. If you want some cool ideas for making vampires better, you should really check out his video. As he points out as well, while these weaknesses might nerf the vampire spawn, they are kind of what makes a vampire unique from any other monster. So what kind of changes do we want to make? First off, I think we can look to the new edition of the Monster Manual. There aren't a ton of changes, but here they are. AC gets a boost from 15 to 16. Hit points get a slight improvement from 82 to 90. Plus, now the vampire spawn has deathless agility. They can dash or disengage as a bonus action. That is for sure tactically significant. These are all improvements in my book, but one change isn't. The stake to the heart no longer has to be wood. It can be any piercing weapon. I'll take the other changes, but I don't need that one. Now, I think upping the AC and hit points, as well as giving them that deathless agility trait, updating it to match the 2025 Monster Manual, makes the vampire spawn a much more imminent threat and much more tactically significant. But you could also fiddle with reducing some of the damage caused by running water or sunlight, or changing the situations in which those things work. But I think you'll find that giving them these small upgrades and using them really tactically, like we're about to talk about, is going to make them an awesome foe for your party. So what does all this mean tactically for the vampire spawn? In The Monsters Know What They're Doing, Keith Amon says that a vampire spawn's AC and hit points are high enough that they have no reason to think they can't overpower most opponents. But there are two things that keep them from running straight into melee. First, they're incredibly stealthy, and they will definitely make use of that, opting to stalk or ambush potential prey instead. Second, they're compelled to feed. Vampires, spawn included, are the kind of predators who will pick off the weak, the old, the isolated, rather than attacking a group. That also means they sometimes hunt in packs, but they won't attack a larger group. Their sunlight hypersensitivity makes them different from monsters who have simple sensitivity to sunlight. Those monsters prefer to be active at night. Vampire spawn have no choice. The sun will eventually kill them. They have to hunt at night. Amon also points out that this probably means they're more likely to be found in urban areas, cities, or larger villages. They probably won't be wandering the countryside or the wilderness because they just won't be able to find the prey they need to survive. Whether spawn are independent or under the control of a true vampire is up to you and the needs of your campaign. You should make that decision before you drop them into an encounter. Now, if they're being controlled, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to bring in their master. You absolutely can have multiple vampire spawn encounters that lead to a blood-sucking BBEG. But the reason I think you should make this decision early is because it matters tactically. It impacts how they hunt and behave. Plus, if your players figure it out, there's a good chance they're going to want to go after the big vamp. So here's how it might play out. Working off our example at the beginning of this video, the spawn will look for the weak or the straggler and stalk them until the moment is right. They'll attack with surprise if they can and start with the claw attack, not for damage, but to grapple. Then she'll go in for the bite attack. Suddenly another vampire spawn leaps from the shadows, this one a man with twisted, hungry features. He takes a swipe at your wizard, attempting to grapple him, but he manages to stumble out of the way. So your wizard managed to succeed on his acrobatics check and avoid being grappled, but it was pure luck. His dex is only slightly higher than his strength, and both are pretty dismal. Thing is, the vampire spawn is smart enough to recognize that the wizard got lucky. He goes for the grapple again, and this time he's successful. Remember that thought I told you to hold? The vampire spawn can only bite a victim who's willing, grappled, incapacitated, or restrained. A true vampire can charm a PC, making it a willing recipient of its bite attack. But a vampire spawn pretty much has to grapple them, unless, I don't know, they find your artificer chained up in a dungeon or something. Two more of the vile creatures emerge from the shadows and attempt to grapple your fighter and barbarian. Both succeed on their athletics checks. This time, the spawn can see that their targets present more of a challenge. Rather than attempting to feed, their hideous features twist with anger and they strike with their claws. So these situations are different. In both cases, the vampire spawn fails to grapple their victim. In the case of the wizard, the spawn can see that he's not strong or dexterous enough to keep avoiding the grapple, making him a good target for feeding. The other two being strong, well, the spawn probably aren't going to see them as an easy meal. They'll just opt to kill the fighter and the barbarian unless they can somehow gain the advantage. Let's say instead that the positioning of the PCs and the monsters has the barbarian flanked. The first, unable to grapple the fighter, goes in for the kill instead of the feed, but the second has advantage on its attack roll and manages to successfully grapple the barbarian and goes for the bite. The spawn facing your fighter, after taking that second swipe with its claws, disengages and begins to move away, giving the fighter no opportunity to respond. Instead, the fighter swings his sword at the creature that's actively drinking the blood of his barbarian companion. Without releasing its grappled victim, the vampire spawn responds by swiping a claw at the fighter, wounding him. But the compulsion to feed is irresistible. So instead of using its second attack against the fighter, it begins to drink from the barbarian once more. Of course, this particular scenario only works if you go with the 2014 vampire spawn, which is overwhelmed by the need to drink. The newer version may not be, but personally, I think this overwhelming compulsion makes them even more terrifying. As the three vampire spawn continue to drink from your party members, their pallid flesh begins to take on color. They become visibly stronger. The barbarian manages to break free and begins to rage, but the vampire spawn holding your bard and wizard begin to drag them away. The wizard's opponent climbs straight up a wall, while the other spawn drags your bard into the shadows. They struggle, but they're just no match for the monsters. Remember, vampire spawn are driven to feed. They didn't attack just because they don't like your adventurers. They'll try to drag their victims into the shadows at a speed of 15 feet per turn, or even use their spider climb ability to get away from your PCs and drink in peace. And all the while they're biting your PCs, doing both piercing and necrotic damage, but they're also gaining hit points equal to the necrotic damage they do as your bard and wizard lose hit points. The vampire spawn continues to feed from your wizard as it's perched high on the stone wall. He gives a final gasp and the light in his eyes dims. The creature drops the wizard's lifeless body to the ground. The other releases your bard. She too drops to the cobblestones, but her chest rises and falls almost imperceptibly. The two spawn flee. As soon as they're able, the other two disengage from your barbarian and fighter and dash off into the shadows. One has finished feeding on your wizard, and the damage is so great that his max hit points are reduced to 0, and he's dead with no hope of being saved. Remember, that's part of what the bite does. The bard isn't in quite so bad a condition, but she is dying. The most important thing to remember is that if these creatures are attacking your party to feed and not to fight, they won't stick around once they've had their fill. Most undead don't really have a survival instinct. I mean, they already didn't. They didn't survive. But vampire spawn, any vampires really, must have a very strong survival instinct. Why else would they be so compelled to feed? They'll disengage, maybe even make use of their deathless agility trait and disengage as a bonus action. The only thing that would stop them from running away once their hunger is satisfied or when their HP is, say, halved, is if a stronger vamp was controlling them and commanding them to kill your party. Of course, when they run, it'll most likely be to their resting place, and that could provide the hook for a side quest, hunting down the resting places of the vampire spawn who killed your wizard and nearly your bard in the streets. There's even a race against time built in. If the party locates them all before sunrise, they can stake the beast where they lie, destroying them with one stroke. If not, a greater battle may ensue. There you go, adventurers. That's my take on running vampire spawn as tactical nightmares. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And please consider supporting the channel by joining the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button right under this video. I dig talking about monster tactics. Check out my take on another classic D&D monster in this video, and I'll see you next time on Short Rest Studios.